everybody. Welcome to Uni Eng Talk, a co-production by me, Faiza Ashraf, and the researcher Eleni Hadjigeorgiou. The podcast is funded by the Newcastle University Sage Participatory Research Fund. The podcast is inspired by the Peer Networks for Engineers project, which is funded by the Royal Academy of Engineering.
Hi, I am Eleni and I am an applied social scientist with experience working with disadvantaged communities using participatory action research and entrepreneurial methods to co-produce knowledge and in this way empower them to take the lead role in their own context. We're here because even though the university aspires to be a welcoming and inclusive place for all students, we know that it doesn't always feel like this, especially for students from minoritized or underrepresented groups like ethnic minorities, LGBTQIA, people of color, and in the engineering context, also women. In our research, we first explored through a really systematic reviews what peer networks have been implemented to increase inclusion in engineering undergraduate students, and specifically the barriers and facilitators of these peer networks to increase sense of belonging. We quickly noticed that there are no studies carried out for peer networks in engineering undergraduate students in the UK context, and therefore we felt the need to carry out a digital auto-ethnography using a digital platform called Indimo to capture the voices of inclusion and exclusion from the minoritized groups in Newcastle University. The identified peer networks from the really systematic review were given to the engineering school students to choose and prioritize three that they deem more beneficial to them. The mechanisms of inclusion and exclusion and the barriers and facilitators of the identified peer networks that they were chosen by the students to implement in Newcastle University were discussed in a World Cafe setting where we gathered all together to formulate the change we wanted to see through each of these interventions. And the research does not end there. It is now passed on to the hands of the very capable students. And through this podcast, they're going to further explore the feelings of belonging as well as disseminate the findings of this project and also carry out their chosen peer networks. All the best.
Today, it's episode 5, and we're talking about affordability. And we have with us some guests who have actually been on the show before, Aarti Kumari and Sophie Murray. So, starting with you, Aarti, do you guys want to just talk about, like, what you do, why you're here, what your experiences are?
I'm stage 3 electrical and electronical engineering. My pronouns are they, them. And I wanted to talk on this podcast because my family are from like a low income background, so I feel like a bit of a pro with this type of thing.
Hi, so I'm Sophie and I am currently working as a graduate process engineer. I did 5 years at uni doing chemical engineering with sustainable engineering and an industrial placement. A bit of a mouthful, but all those words were worth it. So I feel like I wanted to talk about this. Not because I'm from a low income household. I have been really fortunate with my parents' jobs and everything like that. But I think it's an important subject to talk about at university because it's when you start to gain that independence from your parents. And I think money is quite a big part of independence. And it's not something that's necessarily talked about enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I personally come from like my home is kind of in like a low income area. I went to a private high school, but it was kind of through like, bursaries, scholarships, that kind of thing. And now I'm like kind of like low income, student loan. It's never enough. I don't know if you guys have seen the petition that's up for like raising student loan, like because like obviously inflation and stuff. which I have signed because, you know, that would be nice.
Yeah, that's so hard though. Student loans and living on a student budget, it's hard.
It's so tough. Um, Kind of not a first quote, but what we've got on kind of the first slide is just, I think, a general quote on what people feel, especially in Newcastle, which is Newcastle University experience is quite unaffordable, including food, socializing, engineering balls, the bracelet for Freshers Week, which gives you access to events, and the facilities on campus can be quite expensive. Which, yeah, I think for like people in the South might say like, you know, this is, I remember one of my first experiences being in uni was like a couple of my flatmates who are from the South going, we went to, I think it was like Aldi or something. And they were like, oh my God, everything is so cheap here, like so much cheaper. But I still would argue like things, especially like things like bowls and stuff are so expensive.
Yeah, I mean, on that point there, I think, you know, about the wristbands. I do remember that when I was a fresher, you know, a while ago now, gosh, but I had the best time. And I mean, I considered not buying the wristband just because of the price. I was fortunate enough that my parents were like, look, you know, you're starting university, consider it a gift from us. And I was so grateful to be able to go and experience those things. And I made quite a lot of friends, not just with my like flatmates in that week, but also, you know, from different disciplines, from different courses altogether. And I think it was a really good introduction. You want your first experience at university to be a really positive one, and the wristband is a really positive one. It just begs to question, you know, whether that should be free. Because
Yeah, I
why
know what
should
you
it be a
mean.
Yeah.
luxury?
Yeah.
Because it's
No, I
such
agree
a,
with that.
no, go on.
I did work, I mean, I did volunteer for it last year. And last year there was quite a few students who, because it's during induction week, they couldn't do any of the events, but they bought a wristband, but you can't return the wristband. So it actually broke my heart because I was like, I can't give you the money back. There's no way you can get your money back. You've just wasted your money on this
Oh,
because you didn't even know that you had a shit ton of stuff to do in induction week.
Yeah, exactly. And but like I had the wristband as well, and that is honestly where have met most of my friends, or like the people I live with now are people I met through like freshers events, and they were like so fun. And I understand like a lot of them is with like outside places like revs and like mini golf, and that needs money, but like it was so expensive. It's like insanely expensive, and it fine, like you can't, maybe not those events, but there should be like given events that are just free for people to go to, and like a wristband that you don't have to pay for example.
Yeah.
especially the ones that are hosted on the campus, because you're not paying for venue hire, you know, it's the university. And I think that, you know, even if the societies could get on board with that, I know that they have you know, the free trials and the taster sessions and stuff like that. But, you know, could they offer something for the Freshers Week specifically? If you've got a cheese and wine society, could the cheese and wine society actually host an event and then make that free?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
Like they don't have to wait for like the like societies fair and stuff to start getting people involved in their societies. People can, like, I would love to see societies just start things from Freshers Week. It would be good for them. I'm sure a lot of members would like appear even more so than like when they do it. But also it just means that like you're seeing a lot more things that are free and you can't just do. All right, so let's start onto the quotes. So this first page is kind of specifically, we're kind of going into it anyway, but it's on society's unaffordability. So the first participant said, I'm concerned about the price of societies. A lot of the events you have to pay for, a lot of the events you have to pay to do, making it not very accessible in my belief. I would agree with that. I think this year I started off saying I was going to do so many societies, but then I was like, oh God, the price of that is high.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you found it, but have you noticed the hidden prices of the societies as well? You know, particularly the sports societies, you don't just need a membership, you then need a gym membership on top of that.
Oh
And
my
Yeah.
then that
God,
starts to add up.
that's
It adds up
crazy.
to quite a big amount. It's
Yeah,
70 quid for like that a sports membership without the gym. And it's like 120, I think. Don't quote me on that. For a gym included one.
that's insane. And that's just to
Yeah.
be on a sports club as well.
Yeah. Which is
You
usually
think,
like 60 quid as well on top of that.
yeah, you think that if you were on a sports club, then you could use the facilities for free, maybe?
Yeah.
Or like that would
Yeah.
come with the society price, but clearly not. Um,
No.
the, the next participant said, I don't join any of the uni society. Some societies that I want to try, but their trial sessions are always sold out, and some societies don't provide clear descriptions of what they're doing, so I don't want to join. For all societies, we have to pay for a membership. I'm unsure whether it would be cost effective or not, as most of the activities start around 5 or 6, which is the time that I'm already at accommodation. I think it's kind of unnecessary for me to pay for something that I'm not sure about. Yeah, I mean, I think again depends on what society, but a lot of societies do kind of do like specifically nighttime events or like night out events, or that's
Mhm.
what they're like predominantly looking towards, which is fine. Like
Yeah.
having a night out is great, but I also think that like people can broaden to do like daytime activity. I don't know, I'm like a big fan of doing daytime activities in like societies and stuff, or just in general.
I think that looking back at my experience at university, one of my biggest regrets is not having more involvement with the societies. Now, it's easy to say that, but I don't actually know how I would have fitted it in because an engineering day, you have lectures right up until 5 o'clock, don't you? You know, it's a busy day, it's high contact hours. And a lot of the societies do start, coming into action at 6 o'clock, where you might not have necessarily got back to your accommodation, back to your house. You might not have, wound down from the day. You might have assignments. And I always felt like if I had have been involved in a society, for example, but not limited to like netball, I'd have felt like I was letting my team down by not being able to attend every session, which I think is why I was so apprehensive of joining them in the first place. One, because I'd be wasting money with the membership, and two, I'd be letting people down. And I didn't want to feel like that.
Yeah,
I
no,
did
that's
notice
fair.
that this year that they've started doing a month trial for
Yeah,
some
they've got those trial
societies.
sessions, yeah, which are quite nice. Like it is a good way to get
Yeah,
people involved. Um, but I also think that like they it's like a month trial, but a lot of them don't do a lot in that. Like there's a lot of opportunities to
yeah.
do a lot, but they choose not to do as much. Um, which to me, I'm like, you should just try and get as much as you can out there because that is going to get you members. All right, next, on to more specifically engineering-based societies being unaffordable. The first participant said, I have had positive experiences with X Engineering Society. However, the events have usually had been paid for or have limited spaces. This can put me off going as I don't always want to go out or have money to spend to see and meet people, especially with the current cost of living. Yeah, I I think we've kind of spoke about this, but it is the idea of like it's not always going out, and sometimes you just don't have like that money to pay to do something. So to be able to do something chill, like just having like I know some people do like coffee like days or something. That would be like a fun thing that you could do.
Yeah, you don't want everything to be centered around the alcohol either. Having more inclusive events like that in the first place is always a positive thing.
Yeah, exactly. Have you guys like I'm assuming you guys did join your societies. Well, you joined the chemical society when you were in school, and I'm guessing you're in the electrical society. Like, what are they like?
I did join it I was in it for 2 years, and I realized there's no point because I didn't go to any of the events. Um,
Fair
but it's
enough.
like most of the events were nights out and stuff like that, and I didn't really feel comfortable going,
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think,
especially because it's very male dominated.
yeah, I think that's kind of similar with, or at least how I've seen the Chemical Engineering Society. It's very centered on like going out. They don't really do many events aside that.
Sometimes it feels a shame that an event is classed as like, oh, we've got discounted tickets to this nightclub, and you think it's not an event.
Yeah,
That- Like you
like
just sound
this.
like you're like a sales rep right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. No, I know exactly what you mean, and it's just like, oh, we'll get you a bottle and this and stuff, and it's like, okay, it feels like you haven't really put much effort into this event.
yeah.
All right,
It
so
definitely feels like they could like have more private events as well instead of
exactly.
like open to the public type of stuff.
Yeah, it would be nice to have just like, and again, like I've said this before, but like potentially just some like engineering related ones. I know like before, or at least it was either this, I think it was the society, or maybe it wasn't, but like they do like trips to see like plants or something like that, which I think they should still invest in. Like it's something that's an experience that you would like to do given your
Yeah.
degree. Like, I'm not saying make
Yeah.
it all work central because obviously societies are where you socialize, but like you can add hints of the degree that you're in.
I don't know whether either of you ever attended one, but I used to really enjoy the Battle of the Engineers social, where it was just a big quiz. And I just thought that was fantastic. I think, it was a couple of pound entry to do it. And, it really got a team spirit. You got to mix with the different disciplines. I really enjoyed those personally.
I I think I've just like I remember the last one. Sadly, chemical engineering did not win it.
You don't speak about that.
But
No,
I
I
think
heard
both
about it as well.
yeah, I think both of the times that it was all no, I was really busy with stuff, so I just couldn't make it. And I think it was similar for most, like I remember a lot of people in like my cohort, for example, didn't go because we were really busy with stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was just not timed at the best time. But I have like seen people doing it and it does look like a lot of fun.
And there's only one each year. It's not like they do it multiple times each year. There's only one chance to go if there is, like, if you want to go.
They
This is
should
the
do
hard
more.
thing. Yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it, balancing the different year groups, especially with the different like submissions and deadlines that you've got at that
Mm.
time. It is hard to please everybody, isn't it? So yeah, maybe the frequency just needs to increase.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
it is also a nice way for, again, like different engineering principals to see each other because we don't have a lot of that.
Mhm.
So I feel like even just like joint like socials between I know that people do like the sports joint socials, but like to have like, for example, like electrical and chemical do a social together. Like it would just mean you're seeing more people from a different discipline, which
Yeah,
might be nice.
yeah.
All right, so the next one that we've got says, I'm not really involved with X Engineering Society. However, I might need to purchase one ticket for the end of year ball, which is priced at 70 for non-members and 65 for members. This price is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Currently, in the cost of living crisis, societies charging people this much definitely deters people. The only reason I'm buying a ticket is because this might be my last year at Newcastle. I've been told by others in stage 3 that the price of academic and subject societies are a contributing reason to why they've not been involved. Yeah, the balls are definitely something that are so fun, but they are so expensive.
Yeah.
Again, it's the hidden cost of them, isn't it? It's not just your ticket. You need something to wear. You need to get there. You need to, because I'm not walking through the whole of Newcastle in a dress, I'll tell you that for nothing. So there are still a lot of hidden costs, on top of that 65 or 70 pounds. but no one should feel like they can't be involved because of money. It doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree.
I mean,
Another,
there is a participation bursary, but they're very you have to spend money to get the money back. And what happens if you don't have the money to begin with to then do it?
yeah.
It like it's nice on paper, but it doesn't really make sense in that way.
I also don't think it's talked about a lot. Like I know a lot of people who didn't even know that the participation bursary was a thing because it's just not
Mm,
very like advertised.
mhm.
But yeah, I think especially with the balls, like the I like don't get me wrong, I love getting dressed up. It's so fun. But I think sometimes it almost feels like you have to. And like when the dress code is black tie only, it means a lot for a lot of people who, for example, can't afford like a suit or something. It's like they can't really get involved. Do they feel like they can't? That's why one of the balls that are happening this year, run by I think it's LGBTQ Society and FemSoc are doing it together. And the way they've done it is they've said that it's smart, like smart wear what you want really, like dress up in whatever way you essentially want to. Keep it smart if you want to, but like it's very open-ended, which means that people can like they don't feel the need to have to wear like, cash out a bunch of money to like buy a massive suit or something. Like it's quite chill. And I
I
think
love
that
that.
is a good approach.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea.
All right, next one. One thing that makes me feel excluded is the whole ball thing. Like the ones where you have to dress up fancy and I don't know, buy an expensive ticket. Yeah, it's just not very inclusive. For like people that aren't used to it, like people that don't have a suit, can't pay that much for a ticket and the suit. And yeah, I feel a bit excluded just because like most of people had lots of suits lying around and stuff like that, or they're just talking about their tailors, feeling excited for it, but I just couldn't do it. If someone was telling me they were going to a tailor, I would be like, what? That is insane. But, we've covered this. It's just, it is like, it is so expensive. Everything adds up. And you do feel excluded though. That's why I've noticed like the balls are such a like an event to remember that if you don't go, you really feel it almost, or at least like I know I like felt it when I didn't go.
I think, we almost need to be a bit more like schools and proms. I think a lot of schools now, especially, in less privileged areas, they're starting to collect dresses from previous years, charity shops, stuff like that, and have a supply that, you say, oh, I'm struggling, but there's an abundance of dresses that, you could choose from, a bunch of suits that have been given to charity shops or similar,
Mhm.
maybe that's something the university need to look into so that it's never your outfit that stops you from going.
Mm.
No, exactly. I just think that like it's I really can't get over the tailor. I'm just so shocked by it. I'm actually baffled.
I feel like there's a lot of richer students at Newcastle University that don't understand the privilege when they talk about these things.
Yeah.
It's like for me myself, it's been hard to find other students who are from local income households and stuff, and to talk about the stuff that like, well, we can't afford X, Y, and Z, we can't afford to eat out every day or get a Starbucks every day and stuff. But there's still
Yeah.
students who manage to do that, and like overhearing conversations about people buying new clothes and things. I've been wearing the same clothes for like the past couple of years. But it is what it is. You do what you can to survive, and it's a bit like people are a bit blind to the fact that there's poorer people around them who can't afford the
Yeah.
lifestyle.
I think that's something again from kind of my history of being in private school was some like I've always kind of been exposed to this idea of like people really don't like and to an extent it's not their fault, it's how they've been
Yeah.
brought up, but they just don't realize the privilege that they do have. But compared to someone like me who can't do that kind of thing, so like for example, a little school story for you guys. One of the big things in my school was every day after school, a group of like everyone would go to this like frozen yogurt shop and like spend so much on it. And I just never got to go because I was frankly just like, I don't have money to pay for this, and I don't know how any of you do. And it was like little things like this. And even like now, people want to go to certain places for groceries or like to eat out and stuff. And I'm like, that's above my budget. I can't do that.
Yeah. I would say that something that I experienced in first year, when you're put in them mixed accommodation, you know, you don't know who you're going to be with, stuff like that. I was put in accommodation with some really, really privileged students. And I think for a long time, I tried to kid myself that I could keep up with them. You know, we're talking these students would be given, you know, £200 plus a week for, and this isn't rent, this is just spending money. And I would try my hardest to keep up with them because I didn't want to not have friends. And I think it's this need to have friends and need to be involved and almost this FOMO that you get yourself so caught up in. And I tried to keep up with them, but when they're buying Wagamamas for like lunch, just as a casual, or your Hello Fresh orders, and I could not keep up with it, and I ended up getting myself into a bit of bother, just because I ended up spending my money before you know I knew what it was, and yeah, the toast tasted a bit better when I realized what money was, crashing down to reality.
Yeah, I kind of had the same thing last year. Maybe it's a fresher thing, or maybe it's just, you know, you learn when you make a mistake. But I was very like, because when student finance comes in, there's so much, right? There's like it's like 1,000, 2,000, and I've like never had like that amount of money in my bank account. So I was like, oh my God, this is so much money. I'm so rich. Kind of forgetting to take into account that that's like for rent and for like groceries and stuff. So I was like spending, and I got deeply into my overdraft by the end of last year, just being like, oh God, I messed up bad. And now I'm back to like a good place out of overdraft, and I'm like, I am being so careful because I'm like, I don't want to go back there. That was like very stressful. A bad time.
I was just gonna say, like, I think it is something that needs to be taught to first years, that how to budget, how to like make a spreadsheet and just see how much they've got and how much they can spend weekly. I think it's an essential thing to learn in first year, especially because you don't want to get into debt as much as we're already in debt.
No, exactly. And I think it's something that even people who feel like, oh, well, why do I get like, you know, spending money, I don't really need to care. Like, it's still such a good skill to have, and you never know like what situation you'll be in. So to learn that skill would be so, I would argue that skill should be taught in primary school, secondary school, like high school. I remember like thinking back to my high school being like, why were we never taught like life skills that would help in life? But just at some point it would be good to learn that. Okay, so we're going to talk about sports societies and how they're really kind of exclusive when it comes to affordability. I'm going to rattle through these quotes since we have talked about this previously, and then we can kind of just give our general view on it. So participant 1 said, I feel that sports societies can be financially exclusive. It was the participation bursary offered by the student union which allowed me to join the team, the X team, in first year. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to afford the sports membership cost. Participant 2 said, figure skating society. So it was pointless to continue going as no one was teaching us anything, and it cost £15 for transportation and entry. If it was more beginner friendly or the description was more clear, we wouldn't have regretted joining. There were no trial sessions for the society. Participant 3 said, to join the swim team, you both had to pay for a swim team membership, approximately £80, and a gym membership, approximately £300, which as a new student just starting to manage your own money is a huge initial payout before purchasing equipment/team kit. The final quote is, I had felt excluded at times from the X Sports Club as it can be a very expensive sport. And I had a few comments about why I would buy that equipment or certain gadgets, which led me not going back to the club. So again, I think some of the points we have covered kind of in that general sense of sports societies do generally seem to be more expensive, especially with participant 3, like that's £400 on like just the membership and the gym membership. And then on top of that, you have to pay like for equipment and team kit and everything.
That's so expensive. And it's all like lumped together. It's not like you can space it out like you would necessarily on other things in other walks of life. It's a big initial payout, and that's a big chunk of your loan just gone like that.
Yeah. And like you can use a participation bursary, but they don't even you're not guaranteed to get it. And it's not even like that much. I'd say maximum you could get is 260 quid, I think. And
Which
I've
doesn't
never
even cover.
exactly, but I've never seen the situation where somebody's managed to get the whole amount. And also it's one time, you can only do it one time, so you have to have spent that money before you can apply.
Is it only for like a single year as well?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like it just, and then you have to like essentially guess that you're gonna get it and pay for all these memberships. I just think that's ridiculous because if you don't get it, you've spent so much money and you're not getting that money back.
It's like you've got to spend money to get the money back as well, which is just, it's a lot of money out of your account.
That you might not even necessarily like you said before, you might not have that to begin with, and then at that point, what do you do? Because you can't even get the bursary scheme for it.
I'm not surprised people are reluctant to spend that money in the first place then, really.
Yeah, and especially for like participant 4, talking about certain clubs, you know, there is that kind of stigma with certain clubs of how they are. And I think like it does get a bit overwhelming almost for like new people or people who do struggle to have like the basic equipment or like better equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And when I saw that quote, there was one sports team that just immediately came to my mind. And it goes to like, oh, you've got that watch? Really? You should buy this watch. This one's so much better. We wear this. And it's got nothing to do with the sport.
No, like it has not like your ability for that sport has nothing to do with a watch. It's crazy.
It's not nice. It's almost snobby.
Yeah, exactly. And then to sort of round it off with that participant 2 talking about things that are beginner friendly. Like I know a lot of the time when it comes to sports clubs, like I'm kind of hesitant just because I know like most people are really like good at that sport and they've got teams and stuff. So it doesn't really feel like it's necessarily a place for a beginner to go. And then you also have to consider like, is it going to be worth the money? Because am I going to have like, is there going to be enough beginner stuff for me to make this purchase worthwhile?
Yeah. And there's no way to know because they don't say it and they don't specify. And if you do go to a trial, they're going to aim it at you at beginners, so you come, but then just not not take that through the society meetings and all the clubs fun.
Yeah, especially with the idea of the trials, like the free trial ones. I think it's a really good idea, but at the same time, clubs might be like playing up what they offer for people to join and then not doing as much.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to foods on campus and how expensive they can be. So participant 1 said, I normally buy food from the co-op on campus as the alternatives in the student union tend to be more expensive. I really like all the food options available, although having a cheaper option would make it more accessible. Something like a cheap canteen type thing would be great if there are options of different foods to choose from. And then kind of like on a similar point to that, participant 3 said, I think the student union co-op is not an affordable option for some students as the prices there can be quite high. Market stalls on Northumberland Street have affordable produce, so bringing them onto campus could encourage students to buy fresh fruit, for example. Yeah, I can't lie, I'm a big co-op girl just because I keep forgetting to bring myself lunch all the time, but it does get really expensive and the meal deals keep going up as well.
Those Tesco meal deals for like £5 at the minute. What is that? It's not even worth it.
No, they say they're like the extra special, and it's not that special.
No, there's nothing you want more as well, though, when you've got a long day of university to have something warm on a lunchtime. I do know that, well, definitely last year when I was there, they did this £1 soup and a bun deal. And I loved that. That was great because it's warm, it's nice, it's somewhere good to sit as well. You're not just like sitting over a computer desk as well. So I really enjoyed that. I don't know if they still do it though.
I'm not sure. I think you might get it in the courtyard, but I'm not sure. And like again, the courtyard, like I think that is it? I'm not sure if it's cheaper. I can't lie, I've never been to the courtyard, but I know that is kind of like a canteen, right?
I think it's definitely cheaper than the library food prices, which is
The library
extortionate.
is very ridiculous.
And that's where every student is.
Yeah, I think they know they're gonna be there. But it would be nice to see like maybe things like the courtyard being in different places, and that way, you know, med students and like business school people can also have a chance to like, and computer science, like people in the helix can like also kind of have that canteen option, especially like the fresh fruit stuff. I feel like that's really important. Like I don't think to eat fresh fruit, but if it was on campus and like I would probably think to eat it.
Yeah, definitely.
It would be so much better to see some more balanced meal options because I do think a lot of the facilities available on campus, like your Domino's, the Shijo, you know, it's very unhealthy and you need that balance. You need some actual nutritional value as well.
Yeah. And like, you know, there are options outside of campus, for example, and not sponsored, but Eat for Less is really great. It's cheaper. They also have a 10% discount now. You can get a whole meal. And it's warm, which is so nice. And I just think like compared to like sort of that box meal deal that you get, having like kind of like freshly made food that's quite cheap just feels nicer. And yeah, onto participant 2, I find culturally acceptable and healthy food not accessible and affordable on campus. I would love some egg fried rice with vegetables, for example, as a cheap, healthy alternative being offered, a warm meal option, and why are all the food stores closing so early? I do know that they do close kind of early. I'm not really sure about the time for that.
Definitely half 4, 5 o'clock they close. I went at 5 o'clock and kimchi plant was closed. I was sad.
Yeah, I've been caught out many a time when I've been just like so focused on my work. I'm like, oh no, like I need to go to the shop. I'm gonna have to eat at some point. And then you end up walking in the center of town and everything's just closed. And you know, it's such a longer break than you'd hope if you know you're in the middle of doing an assignment for a deadline as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like that kind of egg fried rice with vegetable, like that is something that Kimchi Planet kind of offers, but I think the prices have gone up again. And so like it's probably like £7-ish now. So at that point you're kind of like, I might just throw it with the meal deal, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Just to quickly round off before we talk about what can be done, these are on accommodation, and accommodation not being affordable. So the first person said, I do not live in accommodation. I lived in Newcastle all my life, so I live at home. This is the factor that clashes with opportunities for me to build informal peer networks, especially at the beginning of first year. So a lot of people have already separated off into their like groups, friendship groups, and all that sort of thing. And participant 2 said, I had to take on a part-time job in order to be able to afford the rent, even though this would have been very challenging alongside my studies. Yeah, no, I'm like that, I feel really like I'm really lucky that I do an agency job, so I don't have to, I can pick my hours. But I've heard a lot of people saying like, I need to try and get a job, but it's so unrealistic, especially for like engineering students who are so busy all of the week. So it's like, when will you do your work?
Exactly.
It's just impossible. And to comment on the first one, like, I think we all are from Newcastle. We've all lived in
Yeah.
Newcastle.
Roundabout.
So so I kind of understand that well, actually similar. Like, I'm not in Newcastle. I'm like kind of slightly away. So like commuting would be a bit of an issue. But my fear and the reason why I went to accommodation was that I wasn't going to be able to build those peer networks.
Yeah,
So,
I get that completely. Like, first 2 years at uni was living at home, commuting to Newcastle, and literally after uni, after lectures, just want to go home, have a nap, and not have to do anything. But people would make plans to go out and meet up or prolong the day, and I was just like, I just really want to sleep right now. I'd rather not.
yeah, it's so difficult. So like my first year and a half I did of uni, I lived in accommodation, and then because of COVID, I ended up moving back home, and then I stayed there for my third year, then my placement, then my final year of uni, and it did feel quite isolating, especially when you want, like, everyone nips home to get changed. If you're then going to go out later, they might nip home to get some lunch, whatever it is, and you're kind of just stuck there. And then they might say, oh, we'll have some plans later, and I'm like, if I don't leave now and I have to leave in rush hour, it's going to take me like 2 hours to get home because I live in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, it's not the easiest to make friends doing that.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about what can be done. So the findings from our Indemo were not triangulated with findings from our systematic review. That's because the studies identified did not, I can't speak, did not identify affordability issues affecting sense of belonging. This makes it further important that the voices from students, like us or even egg students, say things so that we have other data. When engineering students were asked about their ideal experiences on campus, or in response to further questions by the researcher when they brought up affordability issues about what we would like to see different, the following suggestions came up in relation to their experiences. So because we don't have, triangulated systematic review, we're just going to go through some more quotes on what people said could be good things instead. So in terms of the food affordability, make it cheap, include hot and healthy and culturally diverse options, and do not limit the number of cheap options. Completely agree. I feel like there should be no limit to it. No one would find it bad to have multiple options to choose from.
Yeah.
Because right now I feel like it's more of a case of there's limited cheap options and you're choosing just whatever you can find that's cheapest.
Yeah. I think I remember when they did release that they were going to do £1 meals, they said it's specific things on the day and there's limited availability. So it's like first come, first serve as well.
Yeah.
I think it was limiting as well, like they might have done a soup, but it would have chicken stock in it, which it's not very inclusive, if you're vegetarian, vegan, or you don't eat meat for cultural reasons, whatever it is, you're then limited to that. You can't get it.
Yeah. And just on like a personal note, the like breakfast, they did like breakfast baps, or like kind of like breakfast rolls, but that was always like pork sausages and stuff. And the other option was to have porridge, which, given like a hot bun and porridge, you kind of wish you'd had an option for a hot bun that wasn't like pork or like more vegetarian friendly. Okay, so participant one said, an ideal day at uni for me would involve a few lectures or tutorials and then time in the library to complete work that needs doing. I think it would be improved by there being cheaper food on campus, so I'm able to stay all day without bringing food from home. Something like a cheap canteen type thing would be great if there were options of different foods to choose from.
Yeah.
And yeah, like for example, we have the courtyard, but that does close quite early. So
Yeah, it's
having something
limited.
that
Like when you could buy the food as well. Like you can't just, you know, if your break from lectures is say at 10 o'clock and they might have run out of the breakfast stuff by then what do you do? You're
exactly,
stuck.
yeah. That like exactly, it would just it's not convenient for because everyone has such different schedules. And I know that's hard to account for, but for a campus, it's just something that they need to start trying to account for at least because everyone's schedule is very different and people do want to stay and work late a lot. The next participant said that my ideal university on campus, I prefer more cafes with cheaper food, tea, and coffee, as the facilities on campus can be quite expensive. And then, kind of similarly, participant 3 said, I would like university to have more convenience stores like Co-op and provide easy availability of low-cost, nutritious food options on different sites of campus, and one open 24/7 would be great. I'm not sure if we have anything that's open 24/7. Not
It
on
would make sense
campus.
for it to be at the Philip Robinson Library because that's 24/7
Yeah,
instead of using the vending machines.
yeah, exactly. Like it would be really nice if that food, like there was food there that you could have all the time because people clearly are spending a lot of their time there.
Yeah.
I know it sounds daft, but like at work, like you don't have to take your own tea and coffee and you don't have to buy tea and coffee. There's tea and coffee making facilities that are absolutely free. And I know that that's on, you know, your employer or, you know, in this instance, it would be for the university to do and supply the milk and supply, you know, alternative milks. But I think, you know, that makes your happiness so much better, you know, to be able to get a hot drink. I think it's basic.
Mm.
Yeah. Like in Merce Court, they have like a hot drink vending machine, but you have to pay £2 a drink, which for a drink, like every day, it would just add up. So you just don't feel like it's worth getting.
Yeah.
The next one, participant 4 said, I would love to have a cheaper hot food available on campus, not just Luther's Bar. I'm aware of the £1 breakfast / lunch options that were available, but I can never get there quick enough to have any. So again, it's like that was a good option, but it had a lot of limit. It was very limited,
Limitations.
is what I was trying to. That's what I was thinking of. It just
We
didn't
knew,
come
we
in my
knew.
head. And yeah, like obviously Luther's is now Spoons. And like occasionally I've been like, oh, like could like to nip in there for a bite. The Spoons is probably more worth going to in terms of hot drink than like, for example, the vending machine we have on in Merce Court, just because like that's free refill. Like if I have a
The
2 hour break, I'm
refills.
going in there and I'm getting like 4 refills just because it's worth getting that. But again, you're still having to pay for it. And the meals
Yeah.
are like cheap, I guess, but they're not the cheapest that they could
I would
be.
say for spoons that they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, that's
And the cheaper
true.
spoons.
Um, and again, Parson 5, we've kind of heard this one before. I think we've heard this one specifically before. The market stalls on Northumberland Street have affordable produce, so bringing them onto campus could encourage students to buy fresh fruit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we covered that, but
Supporting the community as well at the end of the day, isn't it? Local
yeah.
businesses as well, not just
The
Wetherspoons.
fact that when that sentence is said, I feel like we're all seeing the exact same stall that's right in the middle in Northumberland Street when you walk in. It's that stall. It's really great. And participant 6 said, my ideal situation would be maybe going to the Students' Union, maybe Luther's, on a warm day just to celebrate deadlines being met. And ideally, maybe getting some hot, cheap food for all. I know that the Students' Union currently don't do that, but an ideal experience on campus would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That sounded so wholesome. Like just
It
getting
did.
everyone together,
Honestly, that's
getting
what I
something.
want. That's what I want. I want to finish my deadline and go to Spoons and celebrate. All right. So next, about societies and Freshers Week. Uh, so participant one said, Freshers Week wristbands should be free for the first year students. The Freshers Week is so much fun, and it's not fair that students miss out on this opportunity based on their savings. I don't think that this is a luxury. I think it's part of going to university, and it should be provided as a thank you for choosing us. I think that everyone should be able to enjoy the first week of meeting new people, finding new places, and seeing what Newcastle and the university is all about. The university should want to make a good impression as the new students do. I completely agree with that. I feel like it's very similar to what you were saying, Sophie. Like, it is just like, it should just be a given, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, for a lot of students, it's their first time, you know, in Newcastle experiencing it properly without their parents being there on an open day or without, you know, anyone around them. It's their complete independence. You want that experience to be so positive for them because it's one that you definitely remember going forward, like throughout your time at university. You always reflect back on that, and everyone should have the same opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. And participant two said, society should be free for your first semester. Whilst taster sessions are great, I think trying something as a one-off doesn't give someone enough to determine if they're willing to spend their money on it. That's an interesting concept. I think that would be very, I don't know about the first semester, but maybe up till reading week if it was just free and you could, it kind of depends on the society because again, some societies do a lot and some societies
Mhm.
are like on like a fortnightly basis almost.
I'm not gonna lie, with this month they were doing the 1 month free trial type of thing. And I
Mhm.
did hear somebody who was a treasurer, I mean, she was a part of the committee for one of the cities, saying that we have to wait until the month trial work runs out before we do anything extra exciting that costs money.
Oh,
Oh.
that's not good. That's not good coming from a treasurer either.
Yeah. So I did like it raised my eyebrow when it overheard that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, definitely. Because
But the other thing, like, if you're just going to like the taster sessions, especially when you're a fresher, when you're just starting off university, you have no idea what your schedule is going to look like. Like,
yeah,
yeah, sure, you can see it on paper, but in practice, you do not have a clue. That's really
Exactly.
no,
harsh.
completely. Um, and yeah, no, I think again, I think it comes down to that like kind of oh, let the trial be over, and then people will suddenly have to pay for a bunch of things, and it's just not the way that you saw it in that 1 month trial.
Exactly.
On to our last quote of today about accommodations. Every first year student should be able to live in a student accommodation in first year, regardless of their financial situation. I think that this should be provided in a more fair way so that it is accessible to students from less affluent upbringings. If everyone experienced living out in at least their first year of study, I feel that it would increase involvement of some students in societies and out of hours activities, which may not be accessible if a student was commuting in. Yeah, I think
Definitely.
that would, again, I just think that people like, even like what we were saying before, there is a clear almost difference. There is that kind of feeling of loneliness when you're not part of things that just happen spontaneously.
Hmm.
Like, for example, like people are like, oh, let's go for a meal or let's go for a coffee after lectures. And you're like, well, no, I have to go commute or someone's picking me up. Like, you don't get to experience that. But if that was something that every first year could have, then you could make some really like, not that you can't make solid friendships without it, obviously, but you know, it almost makes it slightly easier to make those solid friendships and kind of give you that like first year that's memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was speaking to a first year medical student who lives at home with his parents, and he was saying that he can't join a sports club. He just can't because of the metro. Like he wouldn't be able to get a metro late enough or be allowed to get a metro late enough.
Yeah.
That's not nice. Oh no, I mean, I know some universities have mandatory living out first year. Newcastle don't have that. And I'm not entirely sure, you know, what financial aids there would be to support students in doing that. But I do think it's something that should be looked into.
Mm-hmm.
I agree
Definitely.
with
Like
you.
I think I'm saying like not to force on them, obviously. If people want to stay home, they can. But for those who are more staying home because they don't have another option or can't afford another option, that would be a really great way for them to experience that first year.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's the end of today's podcast. Thank you, both of you guys, for coming on and being guests. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next month for another episode.